Welcome to another economic commentary. I'm Stuart Bergman. If nothing else, talk of recession and depressed demand have brought temporary relief to out-of-control food prices. Since May, the agriculture component of the Bank of Canada's Commodity Price Index is down 12.5%. This is no doubt a welcome development for food importers who count among their ranks some of the world's poorest developing nations. But it may be premature to declare victory over the global food crisis. As pressures on these vital supplies persist, is there a role for Canada to play? When the pandemic hit, food demand shifted from restaurants and the hospitality sector to online shopping and visits to the grocery store, reorienting food supply chains. As we emerged from pandemic-induced lockdowns and demand for eating out and other services surged, production bottlenecks held food supplies back from catching up completely. The Russian invasion of Ukraine only further exacerbated these imbalances, as did poor weather conditions in key crop-producing countries, causing prices to surge 80% on pre-COVID-19 levels. The war also hit the price of critical inputs, such as fertilizers and diesel, forcing agricultural producers to pass these costs on to consumers. The World Bank's Fertilizer Price Index has more than tripled since before the pandemic. While the United Nations brokered deal to get millions of tons of stranded grains and fertilizers out of Ukraine's Black Sea ports could provide some relief, in addition to increased production elsewhere, these developments don't signal an end to the food crisis. There are also very real concerns around the fragility of the ceasefire. Now, looking ahead, damage to agricultural lands and the displacement of labor in both Russia and Ukraine has almost certainly disrupted plantings for next year. And as the harvest gets underway in this critical breadbasket, those still unable to ship their crops this year will have a hard time financing production next season, especially if input costs remain at elevated levels. This will further disrupt 2023 yields and prices for grains and oilseeds. Russia and Ukraine are among the world's top food suppliers, accounting for sizable shares of global wheat, barley, and corn exports. Several countries across Eastern Europe, Africa, and the Middle East are highly dependent on these two markets for these staples. Many countries are now also seeing their currencies weaken, further raising the cost of imports. Egypt, Turkey, China, Indonesia, and the Netherlands are the top buyers of Russian and Ukrainian wheat. For Egypt and Turkey, Russia and Ukraine supply more than 50% of their wheat imports. Egypt has again had to appeal to the International Monetary Fund for aid, while inflation in Turkey threatens to cripple demand there. In fact, there are 25 countries that depend on Russia and Ukraine for more than half of their wheat supplies, presenting an enormous vulnerability for those countries. Now, even in countries not directly exposed, these countries are still feeling the pain of higher food costs. Elevated food prices are a key pressure point for many less developed countries, where household spending on these staples account for a larger share of total incomes. As the world treads dangerously close to a global food crisis and incumbent regimes struggle to contain the impacts, prospects for social unrest are also on the rise. A world leader in the export of canola, linseed, wheat, and barley, Canada has a role to play in helping to fill the void left by recent disruptions, as highlighted in the inaugural edition of our Sectors in Focus publication. On the ag nutrient side, Canada is the world's top exporter of potash, supplying 39% of all global potash exports. This accounts for a greater share than the combined exports of both Russia and Belarus, which together supply about 37% of global potash demand. The Jensen mine, a new plant currently under construction in Saskatchewan, is expected to add a further 8 million tons per year to Canada's production capacity. This is going to make it the largest potash mine in the world, accounting for approximately 15% of current global supply. Another 1.8 million ton mine in New Brunswick, which was shuttered back in 2016, is now also economically viable under current market conditions and can easily be brought back into production as well. Canada is also the 5th largest exporter of nitrogen-based fertilizers, accounting for 3.5% of global exports compared to Belarus and Russia's combined share of 20%. Over the medium term, Canada can make gains by expanding capacity in order to make up for the global shortfall left by these two countries. This $21 billion opportunity presents huge potential for Canada to establish itself as a reliable nitrogen-based fertilizer exporter, given that we are well endowed with large deposits of natural gas. The bottom line? The impacts of COVID-19 induced supply chain disruptions and changing climate patterns brought global food insecurity to crisis levels. According to the State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World report, the number of people now affected by hunger globally rose to 828 million in 2021, an increase of 150 million since before the pandemic. Vladimir Putin's war on Ukraine has only now made matters worse. But Canada's agricultural industry, endowed with the resources, the know-how, and the right technologies, can play a vital role in helping to turn things around. This would require the right investment in both our export infrastructure and our production capacity. This week, a very special thank you to Prince Owusu, Senior Economist in our Economic and Political Intelligence Center. The topic for this week's commentary comes to us from Charles Potts of Brandon, Manitoba. As always at EDC Economics, we value your feedback. If you have ideas for topics that you'd like us to cover, please email us and we'll do our very best to explore them in future editions of the commentary. Until next time, thanks for watching.